This morning, thousands of Americans showed up to airports across the country for their flights. Some were heading to weddings, some to funerals, some to see their kids for Mother's Day. They walked up to the Spirit Airlines counter and found a piece of paper taped to a cardboard sign. No staff, no customer service, no flights, no airline. Just a sign and a departures board full of red cancellations. Well, that's how I imagined it anyway. This morning, Spirit Airlines, the first major American airline to go out of business in 25 years, shut down forever. 17,000 people lost their jobs overnight, and millions of Americans with Spirit tickets are now scrambling to get anywhere. But here's the question nobody is asking. Who actually killed Spirit Airlines? Before we talk about how Spirit died, you need to understand what it actually was, because Spirit has been the punchline of every airline joke for the last decade, and that reputation obscures something important. Spirit Airlines was founded in 1983 as a trucking company, Charter One Airlines, before pivoting to passenger flights. By the early 2000s, it had reinvented itself as an ultra-low-cost carrier with a simple and radical idea. Strip everything out of the ticket price. No bags included, no seat selection, no snacks, no frills whatsoever. Just a seat on a plane for the lowest possible fare. It worked brilliantly. Spirit's model made flying accessible to millions of Americans who couldn't afford the legacy carriers. Families who couldn't afford Delta, workers who needed to get a job across the country, first-generation college students flying home for the holidays. Yes, the bag fees were infuriating. Yes, the seats didn't recline. Yes, they charged you for water. But for a huge segment of America, Spirit was the only airline that made flying financially possible. And here's what most people don't know. Spirit's existence made everyone's tickets cheaper. Consumer advocates have been saying this for years. You don't have to fly Spirit to benefit from Spirit. When Spirit enters a route, every other airline on that same route lowers the price to compete. Spirit's 3.9% market share had an outsized effect on fares across the entire U.S. airline industry. With Spirit gone, experts are already predicting fares will rise. So how does an airline that was serving millions of Americans end up shut down overnight? The story starts in 2022, and it starts with a decision that was made in the name of protecting consumers that may have ultimately destroyed the airline those consumers depended on. In 2022, Frontier Airlines made a $2.9 billion offer to acquire Spirit. Then JetBlue swooped in with a better offer, $3.8 billion, and after a bidding war, Spirit accepted. The merger made strategic sense. Spirit needed capital, JetBlue needed Spirit's routes and gates. Together, they could potentially compete more effectively against the Big Four, American, Delta, United, and Southwest. But the Department of Justice had a different view. In 2023, the DOJ filed an antitrust lawsuit to block the JetBlue-Spirit merger, arguing that eliminating Spirit as an independent competitor would hurt budget-conscious consumers who depended on Spirit's low fares. A federal judge agreed. The merger was killed. Now here's the brutal irony of what happened next. By blocking the merger to protect Spirit's customers, the DOJ may have sealed Spirit's fate. Without JetBlue's capital injection, Spirit was left to survive on its own in an increasingly brutal market. It filed for bankruptcy for the first time in November 2024, then again in 2025. And this morning, it shut down completely. The same consumers the DOJ was trying to protect now have no Spirit Airlines at all. But the DOJ decision wasn't the only thing that killed Spirit. There was a second factor that pushed it over the edge, and it came from halfway around the world. When the conflict in Iran escalated, global oil prices spiked. And for an airline, fuel isn't just an expense, it's the entire business model. Spirit's restructuring plan had assumed jet fuel costs around $2.24 per gallon in 2026. By the end of April, prices had climbed to $4.51 a gallon, more than double what they planned for, on every single flight, every single day. For a legacy carrier like Delta or United, absorbing a fuel shock like that is painful but survivable. They have the financial cushion. They have the pricing power to pass costs on to premium passengers. For an ultra-low-cost carrier whose entire value proposition is the cheapest possible fare, doubling your biggest operating cost is catastrophic. There's nowhere to absorb it. You can't raise prices without destroying the model. You can't cut costs further when you've already stripped everything out. Spirit was caught in a trap. The Iran war's fuel shock exposed every weakness the airline had built into its business model over the last decade. With bankruptcy looming for the second time, Spirit turned to Washington for help. In recent, Spirit had been in serious talks with the Trump administration about a $500 million government bailout. The deal being discussed would have given the federal government warrants representing up to 90% of Spirit's equity, essentially making the U.S. government Spirit's majority owner in exchange for keeping it alive. Trump himself signaled support. "I'd like to save the jobs," he told reporters on Friday. "If we can help them, we will, but we have to come first. We're first." But inside the administration, there were serious disagreements. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy was reportedly skeptical. Republican members of Congress pushed back, and not all of Spirit's bondholders were on board with the terms. On Friday night, Spirit's executive team was huddled in a war room at their Fort Lauderdale headquarters watching their last flights come in. By 11:30 p.m., senior managers told staff the end was coming. By 3 a.m. Saturday, it was over. So who actually killed Spirit Airlines? Let's be honest about the answer, because it's a little complicated. The DOJ played a role. Blocking the JetBlue merger in the name of consumer protection left Spirit without the capital it needed to survive. The irony is brutal. The agency that blocked the merger to protect Spirit's customers has now left those same customers with no airline at all, and potentially higher fares across the board. Corporate mismanagement played a role as well. The machinist union that represents Spirit workers was blunt this morning. Our members on the ramp did not cause this failure. Corporate mismanagement and poor financial stewardship did. Spirit's executives spent years making strategic bets. Fast growth, aggressive expansion, thin margins. That left them with zero financial cushion when the market turned. The Iran war played a role. A fuel cost that doubled in months, driven by geopolitical conflict thousands of miles away, exposed every structural weakness Spirit had. An airline built on razor-thin margins has no resilience when its biggest cost doubles overnight. The legacy carriers also played a role. When Delta, United, and American adopted their own basic economy fares, copying Spirit's stripped-down model, they eliminated Spirit's primary competitive advantage while retaining the financial strength Spirit never had. Spirit became the butt of every airline joke, the memes, the complaints about bag fees, the horror stories about middle seats. But while everyone was laughing, Spirit was quietly keeping airfares lower for every American. And now that it's gone, the joke is on the consumers who never had to fly Spirit to benefit from it. If you have a Spirit ticket, you are owed a full refund automatically if you paid by credit or debit card. Contact your credit card company if you don't receive it within 7 days. If you're stranded right now, Delta, United, American, JetBlue, Southwest, and Frontier are all offering capped rescue fares around $200 for Spirit passengers. You'll need your Spirit confirmation number to access them. These offers won't last long. Spirit Airlines is gone. The yellow planes are parked. The staff are home. And for millions of Americans, flying just got more expensive. Drop a comment. Did you ever fly Spirit? And subscribe to Profit Puzzles for weekly videos on how money really moves.